What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel. Today I'm really excited to start talking about the new leaders of Star Wars Unlimited Jump to Lightspeed. Now that pretty much everything has been revealed, obviously we have a little bit more spoilers to kind of get into next week. I figured I would start doing some spotlight series, just kind of talking about some leaders I want to build, where I want to build them, the direction I want to build them. Also, I have my buddy Matt coming on some episodes, going over decks that he wants to build, why he wants to build them, the way that he wants to build them, and kind of talk about it with him as well. Today we're going to be talking about the leader I've been waiting for. We knew that we were going to be getting Poe Dameron as a leader. I was just very surprised that he wasn't the pilot leader for Red Aggression Heroism, but this makes a lot of sense. Now people are really worried about how good he's going to be, saying he's going to be busted and all that stuff. I have a deck list for you guys that I've been testing out. I have some matches as well. I'm going to show you. I'm going to be going up against a Piett deck, a Piett Yellow deck in Proxy's match after this, to kind of go over the fact that I don't think he's going to be as broken as people think he's going to be. He has some weaknesses. I'll go over that after everything as well. But also just the fact that I still think he's going to be really good. He's not going to have a problem in the meta, I don't think. And just playing with some of the cards and seeing how they work with Poe, it kind of made me lead to this. And obviously the deck list is not refined. More cards are going to be coming out, and I do think I'm going to make some more changes before the first week of locals, which will probably have one of my final deck lists for Poe, and I'll go over that when the time comes. But this is just an early preliminary deck list, and I'm having a ton of fun with it, and I'll kind of go over my thoughts about it as we continue here, right? So obviously you have Poe Dameron. Let's talk about him first and what makes him so good, right? For an action, cost of 1, flip this leader and attach him as an upgrade to a friendly vehicle that without a pilot, right? So it can't have a pilot on it, obviously, but it gets to go ahead and flip onto any vehicle, right? So you have basically a pilot at any time, an upgrade for any of your vehicles at any time for the cost of 1, which is really cool. And then when you go ahead and you flip him over, when he is that upgrade, you can pay 1 and have him hop to another ship once per turn. That can lead to some really big burst combos in terms of you can go ahead and swing with a Green Squadron A-Wing for 5, hop over to, let's say, a Phoenix Squadron and attack for another 5, right? That's a 10 damage swing for the cost of 1 if you already have Poe Dameron on a ship, or you can pay 2 and still do the same thing as long as people aren't taking out your ships. The big thing is no one is going to allow you to kind of keep a lot of ships on board if they can prevent it, which would potentially lead to you essentially not having a leader for a little bit. But he comes out on 5 with the epic action, and if you have 5 or more resources, you can go ahead and flip him. He's a 4/6, no ability on the ground, but still 4/6 is not too bad. His ability leads you to be able to do some really cool combos, kind of like if you have a Green Squadron A-Wing, like I talked about before, you attack for 5, or you can attack with, let's just say, Heroic Sacrifice, right? You go ahead and you hit for 7, he goes back down. If you have 5 resources, you can go ahead and flip him for 4, right? So that's 11 damage in on that, and then you have a 4/6 body on the floor, on the ground, and then you go ahead and you draw a card, and potentially able to still play things in space to kind of go wide. That's kind of how I built this deck. I kind of went with the go wide strategy, just to kind of give me more options to use his ability at least once per turn. It still doesn't happen as often as I would like against certain decks, right? Obviously, against Piett, Triple Dark Raid, he's able to kind of keep my units at bay in space, and then you kind of go and try to adjust from there, right? I went with Energy Conversion Lab because obviously Red Heroism, you have the big 3, K2SO, Poe Dameron, and Wrecker. Still really good threats for ECL. Also, turn 1, if you are going with an aggro deck, you can go ahead and ECL out one of your ships, and potentially taking out your opponent's ships before they can get going is really good. In this game, if you have the upper hand and you get your opponent on the back foot, sometimes it's enough, right? I do think this deck struggles against, obviously, right, Triple Dark Raid decks that get their vehicles out in space, ready to go. Surprise Attack, also pretty good against this deck as well. And then Tarkin Town, right? Tarkin Town is something that can really slow down this deck to the point where you might just be fighting just to get something out in space. But again, this is why I kind of play a pretty good amount of low cost 2-drop space units. So even if one gets taken out, I can potentially get Poe onto another one and get going. Another thing to note is that I think that early on in the set, people are going to find a hard time balancing out their deck in terms of I think a lot of things are going to change. This is kind of like the Covert Missions Destiny set, right? I feel like a lot of things changed in Destiny when Covert Missions came out with pilots and stuff like that. It's such a big mechanic. And I think that things are going to change a lot with this as well, right? I think that people are going to maybe struggle with that balance and trying to figure out like ground to space ratio. I think that decks are really good when they can have kind of an even split of both ground and space. But with that being said, this ability does heavily focus around space. So if you can't have maintained space, then his ability is a little bit wonky, but I still have been having a lot of fun with this deck. I think that it's going to be really strong. I think that if you go up against a deck that's heavy ground, you can really, really push the temp, like really aggro, because Poe Dameron can get in an additional 4 each turn, potentially for 1 to 2 resources, which is crazy. So that's my initial thoughts. I don't think he's going to be overly broken like everyone says, as long as you can go ahead and kind of control space a little bit, like keep it at bay, like try to keep Poe with 1 space unit at a time if possible. I do think that control is going to have a decent time against this because, you know, open fire, takedown, vigilance, and all that stuff, potentially able to kind of take the space threats away. Heavy sentinel decks could be a problem, but I'll kind of go over that as we continue on with this video, because there are ways around that in this deck, which I think are really, really fun. But let's go ahead and show off the deck list, right? I'm just going to go ahead and show you the deck list, talk about the cards that I have and why, and kind of the changes that I might want to make going further as we kind of continue here, right? I have BB-8 to start off. BB-8 is so good in this deck, right? You have a pretty okay amount of resistance units, but obviously Poe being the main one, you can go ahead and use the ability to ready up Poe if you had attacked with Poe leader, and you can go ahead and play this for 3 on a ship or a vehicle, obviously, and then re-ready Poe. So it's an 8-point swing like that. We also have Wexley, but it's not really used for Wexley. We also have Poe Dameron unit, which would be absolutely insane. If you're going up against a heavy space threatening deck and they're not taking care of your ground units and Poe Dameron's able to swing and stay on the field, put BB-8 on a ship for 3, you get 2 Poe Dameron swings for potential 16 damage and on the base. Huge threat there, right? And then you also have Black 1 that can be really big, and I'll go over that as we continue down the list and talk about Black 1, but BB-8 plus Black 1 is really good as well. We have Sabine. I felt like you still need to have like an early game ground unit. You might want maybe more. You might want to maybe throw in Battlefield Marines, right? But I went with just Sabine. If I have to, worst case scenario, I'll throw BB-8 on the ground if I really need ground if space is kind of taken over. Because I do think that this deck struggles when not having the initiative and your opponent plays in space turn 1, right? And again, I'll go over the reason why I think that when we get to our space units. Sabine's still really, really good card. Their attack, you can, you know, get rid of the village protectors if they are on the ground. You can go ahead and ping, get rid of the sentinel. Also, just like having at least 3 aspects not being able to be attacked is just really solid. It's just a way to keep a unit on the board. Sabine's always been really solid. Cassian Andor. Now I think Cassian Andor is still really good. Tarkin Town's still going to be a thing. A 3/5 body for 3 is just always solid. Also coming out on 5 for Smuggle readied. It can really help you kind of keep momentum when your opponent kind of takes out the units on the board, right? So you can still maintain aggression into the base, and I think that Cassian, you know, is staying in this deck for me. I opted to go with 2 Fleet Lieutenants, again, for the more aggro feel to it. I have a ton of Rebels in this deck, space and ground, so I figured that I would keep Fleet Lieutenant, but as a 2 of, because again, if I start with Black 1, then, you know, Fleet Lieutenant turn 2 isn't really going to happen. Fleet Lieutenant later on in the game has proved to be really, really good for me, so I opted to keep it at a 2 of. And then Leia Organa, I have it as a 2 of as well. It's another way to pump up your pilots, so you can go ahead and use this and play this with Poe, your leader, on the ground, right? You can play attack with Poe as the leader, attack and get restore 1, which is really nice. You get that +1 attack, so you're attacking for 5. Or you can go ahead and swing in with your vehicles with pilots on them and get a +1 and restore, and the restore is pretty nice. For the reason why I'm using Leia though is because we do have access to a pilot at pretty much any time in this deck, because Poe Dameron as the leader, you just pay 1 and he pops out onto your ship. So you have that option to pretty much have this on board pretty much like a good chunk of the time. And then essentially when you go ahead and you put Poe onto a ship and then you use this as a 3-point swing, right? You get +3 on your ship, and you get restore 1. So I felt like Leia really did fit this deck really well, and I have been having a ton of fun with Leia. It's just, I don't know if I want to go with more Fleet Lieutenant because it does have that +2 initial pump, but this also allows you to get that restore. So this is why I'm kind of playing around with both, right? I have Snap Wexley as a one of. I might drop it. Really, it's like when I play it on a ship or a vehicle as a pilot, I want to try to get Poe Dameron unit into my hand, right? You get to search your top 5 cards of your deck, get a resistance card, reveal it, add it to your hand, right? Or draw it. It's pretty good. Also, when you go ahead and you play this, if you play this on 3 resource turns, you can go ahead and play BB-8 for free. If you want to do that, just kind of go wide if you are going up against some control matchups that are using Power of the Dark Side and stuff like that. It is an option, but I'm kind of on the fence with him. It has come up and it did help me get Poe into my hand, but then I ended up drawing 2 more Poes, and it's like I had 3 at some point, so it's like, either way, I thought it was fine. Still on the fence. K2SO, 3 of, obviously a great target for Energy Conversion Lab. We know what it does, deal 3 damage or discard a card from hand when defeated. It's just really solid. Also has Overwhelm. Now I have Chewbacca in the main board. I think that he's just really good, especially against that control matchup. You could argue that he should probably be in the sideboard. I can probably move something out from the sideboard and add Chewbacca. But even Chewbacca as a 5/6 5-drop doesn't feel as bad. Also can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities. So against those matchups that are using Waylay and stuff like that, this can still stick on the board, and you're hitting for 5. It's pretty solid. So I felt like it was strong enough to have in the main board, at least for the initial testing, and it has been pretty good. I love putting it on my ships, getting +3/+3, or just having it on the ground as a threat there. It's been pretty good. Also, Chewbacca, good character, so he fits pretty well in this deck. I have Poe Dameron, the 5-drop, super good. Obviously, ECL target, one of the best, if not the best. Maybe behind Wrecker might be number 2, but just really solid. We all know what it does. And then Wrecker, as we just talked about, another ECL target. It's just really, really solid. So I have 23 ground units in this deck, right? And maybe it's not enough. Maybe I should go with more space. And that's kind of where maybe I'm not saying I'm struggling with it, but maybe I'll go ahead and get rid of Wexley and add more space. I feel like having this kind of split has been pretty good so far, but I do think that I do want to add more space and maybe some more 2-drops just so I can go wide. But then you're going up against ships that just kind of trample you, and then the switch to ground felt really good. So you're going to see that in the Piett match in a couple of these matches. So it's just, I feel pretty okay with what we built. But again, I'm kind of on the fence. Maybe I should add a little bit more space units because we are rocking 18 space units compared to our 23 ground units. But that also does include our pilots. So we do kind of have that, initial split, even split, right? Let's go ahead and talk about our space units and why I kind of went this route. I went with Black 1. Black 1's super good, especially with BB-8, right? So there was a match that I had against Piett. It's not going to be shown, sadly, because the footage got wrecked. So my opponent had played a Sentinel in space. I had Poe Dameron on I believe it was a Resistance X-Wing, right? So it was a 5/4. But I didn't want to waste my attack into the Sentinel. So I had enough resources to go ahead and play Black 1. It was on the 5 resource turn. Play Black 1. And then ready it up with BB-8. I went ahead and I swung the Resistance X-Wing. I think it might have been a Green Squadron A-Wing. Phoenix Squadron A-Wing. And I think it did end up dying to the Sentinel. But I took out the Sentinel. But then I still had Black 1 attacking for the extra 4 into base, right? So you use 1 ship to attack into the Sentinel, and then you go ahead and you swing into base for that 4, and then because Poe Dameron, it was a 5 resource turn, I just flipped Poe Dameron out onto the field. It was a really good way to kind of get rid of the Sentinel while still keeping up the pressure in on base and still getting in some really good damage. So I think Black 1 plus the BB-8 combo is just really, really good. Even if I just wanted to go ahead and play BB-8 and flip Poe back up and get 8 damage in the base, essentially it was the same amount of damage, but it's just an option. BB-8 is a good way to kind of get around Sentinels in space if you have to, if you want to try to keep your fleet kind of going strong still. But I really do like this card, especially if you have on it the Poe Dameron in play unit or leader. You get to just ping something for 1, which is just really solid. Works really well with Red 5, which I also have in the deck. Green Squadron A-Wing, obviously, is just really solid. 2-drop in space early. put a Poe on it if you can. Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, again, a 2-drop. This card makes it more difficult for your opponent to kind of trade and keep their units on board. I think the main problem with this deck, or one of the weaknesses with this deck, is that early on, your opponent can swing into your space units, trade into them, and keep theirs on the board, right? With Green Squadron A-Wing only having 1 attack back into their unit, Black 1, 2 damage back into their unit, and then Resistance X-Wing as well. They're easy to swing into with little to no drawback, right? Because you are most of the time keeping your units on the board while taking out your opponent's units. Phoenix Squadron A-Wing hits back for 3, so it makes your opponent kind of think twice of like trying to do that, right? I had a match again against the Piett deck where they went with the Corona, and I had Poe on him, and then he put a pilot on his, right? I had to go ahead and hero sacrifice and take out the Corona, but if I didn't have the Green Squadron, then the Phoenix Squadron, then I wouldn't be able to do that potentially and stuff like that, right? Like, so it's just something that gives your opponents like more fear to kind of swing it to. The Phoenix, the Phoenix Squadron only having 2 HP is a little bit rough sometimes, but I do think that it's really solid in this build as well. Next we have the Resistance X-Wing. I just have it because turn 2, if you put Poe on him, you go ahead and he is technically a 5/4, which is pretty hard to kind of deal with. I have it as a 2 of. Maybe if I get rid of Wexley, I go to 3 of on this, or I could go with a different space unit. But I do kind of like Resistance X-Wing if I have the initiative, right? If I don't have initiatives, then I don't really like this. And that's where I think that this deck kind of struggles again. If you don't have the initiative and you are playing against a deck that does run a lot of space units, early on, because again, like I talked about, Black 1, Green Squadron, Resistance X-Wing, they're easy to take out on the first turn of the next turn. So it's a little bit scary sometimes playing this deck. I have Millennium Falcon as a 3 of, basically because I can put multiple pilots on it. It's really strong because it does get that plus attack when it has a pilot. So same thing as Black 1. I think that those 2 vehicles, those 2 ships, space units, are really strong because of that, right? Because you're already getting your buff from your pilots, and you're also getting a +1 from the abilities on this. I saw just how strong that really is, because just putting the pilot on it and getting the extra 1, you're essentially getting +3 with a lot of these pilots on your attack. So Millennium Falcon swinging in for just 6, Black 1 swinging in for 5 most of the time. It's just really strong just because we can put pilots on these things really easily with Poe's ability, right? Also, Millennium Falcon is able to get an additional pilot, which is just really strong as well, because he can then get +2 plus all the stat boosts, and it can become a really big threat in space. It is a rebel as well, works with Fleet Lieutenant, which is really nice. It's just a really strong card, and I opted to go with 3 of them and 2 red 5. With the combination of Black 1 plus red 5, you are able to kind of ping around the board if you are able to get these 2 vehicles to stick on the board, which is a really good combo. You can kind of control the board in a sense, just maybe get rid of some threats, maybe get rid of a sentinel that's kind of being a pest. Just really good. And then I have 2 red 3s. We all know what it does. My heroic units are going to get raid 1, which everything in this deck is heroism, so it works really well. Let's go into our events, and I'll kind of go over one of the big ones and why I kind of went one way over the other, right? Heroic Sacrifice, really good. Again, if you have 5 resources, you have Poe on a ship, Heroic Sacrifice, get that basically +4 on that ship. Poe goes back into your leader zone exhausted, but you can still flip him out as a leader. Leads to really big swings. Also, it's just a pump. Gets good card draw as well. I went with Rebel Assault over Trench Run. Now, hear me out. You guys are going to be loving Trench Run. It's really cool, right? All those things. Trench Run, to me, against certain decks, kind of feels like a trap, right? So the reason being is that a lot of other decks are going to be running a split of cards in terms of resource cost. That's probably going to take out all your fighters, right? It has to be fighters. So the HP on the fighters is typically low, typically 3 to 4 HP, right? Trench Run just feels like it's like, yes, you can have a pilot on it and beef up that unit, but I still feel like a lot of the time it's not as easy as you think to at least get Poe onto something and kind of get it to stick, because it only gets +1 HP. I just felt like this was more of a sideboard card, right? I feel like this is great against the mirror aggro matchup where you just need to go ahead and get +4, and they're playing a bunch of low cost units, right? 3 to 4 cost. Yes, you have that Poe if you get really unlucky and you go ahead and you flip a BB-8 and a Poe. Yes, you're taking 5 back, probably losing your ship, right? I think this is more of a sideboard card in this type of deck. I think in other decks, this could potentially be in the main board, but at least for my experiences, my testing, I think Rebel Assault is better than Trench Run for what I was going for. Going wide with a bunch of Rebels, you see Green Squadron, Phoenix Squadron, Millennium Falcon, Red 5, Red 3. Then you also have K2SO, Leia, Fleet Lieutenant, all these things, right? You have a bunch of options with Rebel Assault that swing for 8, 9, 10 damage. Could be that burst of speed that you need to kind of take advantage of the game. And then your opponent has to like flip over and try to take out your units because next turn you can potentially win the game, right? There are so many big potential swings in this deck with being able to hop Poe from one ship to another, obviously once per turn, right? So if you can go ahead and get that 4-point kind of swing there or get a Rebel Assault off, you're in a really good spot. So I just felt like the unnecessary risk of Trench Run, yes, that +4 is very, very appealing, but the drawback, right? Like these fighters don't have a lot of HP. It is scary. So you just have to kind of think about that. If I have Chewbacca on something, I feel pretty good. But, you know, I have the Sabling Fang Fighter, obviously the upgrades, kind of something to deal with. I have that as, it's supposed to be a 2 of, it says 3, but it's supposed to be a 2 of. Bright Hope, a lot of space units now. Bright Hope in space is just really good. Also being able to probably, hopefully, bounce back a Leia or a Fleet Lieutenant to your hand, draw a card, really nice, be able to play it again next turn. But I think that is a really solid card, Bright Hope, obviously. And then I have the Senatorial Corvette, right? Senatorial Corvette. It's a Saboteur. Sometimes the Sentinels in space do become a problem. And I do really like this because it does add discard. The 4 HP is a little bit, like, it's not super hard to get rid of, but it makes it so your opponent kind of has to get rid of it and kind of draw it away from your base while you can go maybe shift to the ground and stuff like that. I do really like it in the sideboard. Again, that Saboteur in space is nice. But yeah, this is what I'm rocking with right now. Obviously not a finished product. So let me know what you guys think. Try it out. What I kind of realized with Poe Dameron is that you don't really use his ability as often as you like. For the most part, if you can manage to keep a lot of vehicles in space, it's just really nice, right? Or even vehicles on the ground. I don't have any. I was debating whether or not to use the Guerrilla Attack Pod in this. I feel like Guerrilla Attack Pod could be really fun because it does come out ready. If you have, if either base has 15 or more damage on the base, then you can go ahead and play Poe on it, right? And so like it's another option. So I was kind of back and forth on that one, right? But I do think that this deck is a ton of fun. Obviously, I'm going to be fine-tuning it, going a little bit further. But again, try it out. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to go ahead right now and hop over to a matchup between a Triple Dark Raid Piett deck that has two kind of ways that the match went, right? I didn't actually talk about Eject. Let me go ahead and talk about Eject. Eject is extremely strong, right? Being able to detach a pilot upgrade, move it to the ground area as a unit, and exhaust it, draw a card. I don't think the draw card was necessary on this. I think that it was really good to begin with Poe, obviously. Being able to do this on turn 2, get Poe down to the ground, is a 4/6, is really hard to deal with on turn 2. And you, like, if your opponent doesn't take care of your space unit, then you have potentially, like, 7 damage coming to the opponent's base, and it is super hard to deal with if they didn't do the right things to kind of get rid of it as it is, right? So you kind of see, you're going to see how strong this combo can be. But again, Poe Dameron being able to use his ability to hop onto a ship early on, make it so your opponent has to think about if they should swing into it or not. If you have the initiative, this deck is really strong. If you don't, the deck does have weaknesses that you will be seeing in this matchup. So let's go ahead, hop over to the matchup. I'll see you guys over there. All right, we are here now with the matchup between Poe and Triple Dark Raid Piett. You're going to see that I have the initiative, obviously, so I don't fear putting out my space unit. So I put Sabine down as a resource. You see that I go with the Green Squadron A-Wing, mainly because, and then I end up drawing Eject. I think I already had Eject in hand, so I'm going to put the extra one down as a resource here. Now you're going to kind of see me knowing that my opponent probably doesn't have anything to deal with the Green Squadron A-Wing immediately. I go ahead and I put Poe on it, And then he goes ahead and he swings with 2 into base, and I go ahead and I swing my 5 into base with Poe, right? My opponent could have played triple Dark Raid a turn earlier and forced me to eject Poe onto the ground immediately, but you see the triple Dark Raid coming in here, and you're gonna see him probably get that Lurking TIE Phantom, right? I see the Lurking TIE Phantom out here. I know he's gonna be swinging into my Green Squadron A-Wing. He's able to take it out. Yes, he will, and he won't lose his Lurking TIE Phantom. It would just go to hand, right? I do eject here, and then Poe does come down as a leader unit exhausted, right? And he opts to go into base here instead of taking out the Green Squadron A-Wing. But, I mean, maybe he knew that it was going to go to hand, his Lurking TIE Phantom was going to go to hand anyway. But probably prioritize the Green Squadron there. But either way, now we have Green Squadron and Poe Dameron as the threats here, and we're kind of, you know, going a little bit further. I do have Trench Run in my deck here to showcase why I kind of prefer it the other way, right? I could Trench Run here and then get in some massive damage. I have to go ahead and swing into base with Poe. I'm going to try to outpace him here because he didn't take out my Green Squadron A-Wing. I don't have to take out his unit. He does have, we are even in damage, but because I was able to keep the Green Squadron on board, I'm able to kind of take a little bit of a lead here. He goes to the resupply, able to kind of get out Piett. I go ahead for the K2. He takes initiative instead of deploying Piett, because if I have Poe, Piett just dies, right? There's nothing he can really do at that point because I can ECL out my Poe Dameron, take out his Piett, then he's not able to play his things for sure. At this point, I have 11 damage on board and able to kind of get some big swings in here, especially because I do have Poe in hand. I have the ECL target that I want and kind of go to that route, right? He does have Overwhelming Barrage in hand. It sucks because he does have to kind of use it here to mitigate damage, but he's only able to take out either Poe or K2SO. So he is going to use the Overwhelming Barrage, get that 6 damage in on Poe. You could maybe argue that K2SO might have been better because he does have that 4 swing, can become 7 if I have another one in hand, but he opts to go in and take out the Poe. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to keep on the pressure here, right? So he has 12 damage in on base. I'm just going to go ahead and swing with the K2, put him at 16. And you're seeing that, like, I have like an even ground and space threat here in a sense, right? But the K2 now goes down. I just go ahead and deal the 3 into base. Either way is the same outcome. Whether he used, it's going to die at the end of the turn. That's why I did that. I keep the momentum on. We have 3 damage more into base. So he's at we're trying to do some math here. Got 21 damage. Now he has to kind of decide if he wants to take out Piett. He doesn't go with Piett because he knew that the Poe was probably going to come. And I just play Poe. At that point now, Poe is swinging in for 8. And I have the Green Squadron A-Wing to kind of finish him off. And I have the Heroic Sacrifice. So I can deal 10 damage with Poe. There's nothing that he can do in this moment to kind of take out Poe. And kind of go that route. So I do think maybe early on he wants to go ahead and take out the Green Squadron A-Wing with the Lurking TIE Phantom. But I mean, again, just kind of trying to figure out what you want to do. This deck is about ramp, using triple Dark Raid to also further your ramp, to get out to your big stuff faster than your opponent. And it does have a pretty decent matchup into this Poe Dameron deck. It's just unfortunate the way that this one went. I got eject on turn 2, which is what everyone's really afraid of. And now I use Trench Run here to kind of showcase. He does scoop, but I did want to showcase what could happen, right? He goes ahead and he flips the Chimera and he flips that, and it just dies, right? So if I were to ever use Trench Run, it just feels bad half the time. So I went back to Rebel Assault after that for game 2, and I'll see you guys over there for game 2. All right, so now he has initiative. He does go with, he goes into space, and now it feels bad. So I have to go with the Phoenix Squadron to take the damage that he's going to be dealing out. Because I think that was my only space unit in hand. So you see it go in, it swings, and it deals the indirect damage into my base, right? So he takes out my space unit. I can't put Poe onto a unit and swing big damage this turn. I put the Millennium Falcon now, and again, just trying to figure out what to do here. You see the triple Dark Raid coming out. If he gets the Lurking TIE Phantom, he then goes ahead and he takes out the Falcon, right? And that's one of the things that I feel like this deck could struggle with in the early game, which is why I kind of wanted to go a little bit more, maybe 2 drops on the ground to still be able to maintain my pressure in on the base. But, you know, we keep it rolling here, right? So we go into the next turn. I'm going to go ahead and put Cassian down. 4 resource turn, I'm just going to be able to put down K2SO. I'm going to have to shift my focus now to the ground, which is what I wanted to do with this deck. Kind of have that option to, if the early game in space isn't going to do too much, you know, shift to the ground, K2SO, Poe, Wrecker, all that stuff, right? So you see Poe Dameron, not Poe Dameron, you see K2SO come out. He's just going to straight up resupply. I'm going to take the initiative, again, making it hard for him to deploy Piett, because if I do have that Poe, which I do, it would just die at the start of next turn. Yes, he could get 2 damage in on my base, but then he loses his leader unit and the ability to play those big capital ships for 2 less, which is what he really wants to do, right? So you're going to see that I'm just going to start off this turn by going in on the base, 4 damage in the base. He does now flip out the Piett, but I go in with Poe, discard, and get rid of my Green Squadron A-Wing and kind of go that way. I ended up keeping the Resistance X-Wing because I put Poe on it. It's a 5-4 rather than a 3-4. You know what I mean? So I think we're just talking about how difficult it is against this deck with ECL still up to keep Piett on the board, right? So it can become a problem if this happens, right? We shift from space to ground and kind of go that route. He does have Phase 3 Dark Troopers in the deck if he had that in on the board. Again, I did have the K2, so I could swing over it and still have that option because I did have initiative. But now you see the triple Dark Raid. He has 3 resources open, so he could get a big ship potentially. He's not able to have it cost 2 less, sadly, but he can still. Because if he did have those 3 resources open, he could have seen Devastator and played it for 3. He does go with more ramp. You're seeing the screen shake. I believe Emerson is kind of shaking the board at this point. We have Poe coming out now with 5 resources on the board. I'm up to 6 damage, and he goes up to 8 damage. And now you're kind of seeing, like, we go from space. He controlled space. He has to use his resources to kind of do that, right? While also not having any units on board to kind of keep that pressure on, right? And then now you see how this game has completely changed in terms of, like, he has initiative now, but I now have K2, Poe, and Poe on the board here. It's just really hard to deal with at times. Just to kind of shift from space to ground. So, and that's what I think that people are going to realize in this set, right? It's going to be interesting to see how things kind of roll, because I do think that a lot of people are going to maybe focus too heavy on one side or the other, leaving decks that are split the opportunity to kind of do something like this, right? Start off in space, flip over to the ground, right? I've had matches where I just strictly stick in space while also having Poe on the ground or Wrecker on the ground as an ECL target to kind of help myself on the ground. But having that option to have Poe hop from ship to ship once per turn, smack into something, into base, potentially because they are, again, focusing on the ground at that point and not taking out your ships, this deck has a chance to kind of just spiral and kind of go that way. And we're just kind of discussing, like, how strong the Poe Dameron unit is. The leader, as we said, it's all right. Like, it's really good. I think it's fantastic, right? But I don't think it's gonna be as broken as people say it's gonna be. The opportunity to hop from ship to ship, again, very dangerous, right? Eject, turn 2, very dangerous, as you guys saw. But you are able to kind of mitigate it. I think that Tarkin Town decks, when they just play something that pings, gets rid of their unit while also keeping their unit on the board, then this deck's on the back foot, and it's really hard for it to kind of get going or get back up to speed until like turn 4 or something like that, right? So it goes both ways, right? I think that this deck has its weaknesses, being I think Django Tarkin Town could be a threat in this because it does have triple dark raids and it has Tarkin Town, so it can kind of keep things really mitigated early game. Tarkin Town, triple dark raid, those things. Heavy Sentinel decks are really scary. Again, there are ways with BB-8 and stuff like that to kind of get around it. I am going to go ahead, attack for 8 into the base. He's going to take initiative. I'm going to deal another 8 into base here. So that's 16 total. I'm going to also just play another K2SO. And then I'm going to play that. And then at that point, he knows that he can't really do too much because at the start of next turn, if he had drawn the one card that allows him to deal the damage from his space unit into the ground, wipe out everything, he still would have died to K2SO, so he still couldn't even do that. He'll play the Devastator, he'll take out the Poe, and then I just go ahead and I swing, right? So, honestly, my initial thoughts on the deck, not a finished product. Let's go ahead and bring up the deck list. All right, we have the deck list here. Again, let me know what you guys think of the deck. Obviously, early deck list. I'm making some changes as we speak. I see some things I want to change and kind of go with. But still, it's really strong. That being said, I still think that Sabine might be a little bit stronger with the additions of all these space units and stuff like that. You give Sabine more of an even spread when it comes to ground and space. Kind of something like this. It can be a real problem to deal with Sabine in this next set. I think maybe more so early on. But again, I think Sabine gets a little bit stronger. I don't know if Poe is as strong as Sabine, but I still think it's really, really good. I just don't think it's like everyone's freaking out about the power spike, right? Poe Dameron, I think Piett's extremely good. I think Piett Red might be a little bit better than Piett Yellow, and you're going to see that Matt's going to go ahead and show off his Piett Red list on the next leader spotlight video. But again, I really am enjoying this deck. I think this deck has a ton of potential. I think it can be a huge threat, but there are ways around it, which is why I don't think it's as broken as everyone's fearing it to be. But with that being said, if you guys are new here and enjoying the content, make sure to hit that sub button down below. Support is always appreciated. Let me know what you guys think of the deck list. That will also be posted down below, and expect some changes so it's not exactly the same as the one on this video. Understand that I am still tinkering with it and trying to figure out the perfect mix of what I want to do, right? If you guys haven't done so yet, also check down in the description Maclunky Gaming's YouTube channel and their Twitch channel. They do a lot of streaming for PQ content. If you are interested in seeing some high quality commentating for the PQ season, definitely make sure you hit them with a follow on Twitch and a subscription on YouTube as they put the VODs from Twitch onto YouTube. Great people, obviously great commentary as well. With that being said, we're going to go on and get out of here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.